I'm Lynn.
I'm Amanda. And this is the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast.
We're cutting through the fluff and cracking open what it really takes to build a business and life that you actually want.
No gurus, no gatekeeping, just real talk, big action, and the badass energy you need to scale and slay.
Some episodes, it's just us.
And sometimes we bring on powerful guests with stories that'll hit home.
Either way, this is not about playing small.
It's about going all in.
Let's get after it. Hey there, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda. Welcome to the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast. We are back again with another incredible guest. This is April Roberts. She was one of our wonderful summit speakers. She's a CEO mentor, aligned energy coach, spiritual mentor, and former attorney who scaled and exited a multi-seven-figure financial firm before founding the Vixen Gathering and the Aligned Feminine. She's a sought-after speaker and transformational leader, and she helps high-achieving women build businesses and lives that feel just as powerful as they look by integrating strategy with soul, power with presence, and ambition with deep energetic alignment. Welcome, April.
Yeah.
Well, so glad to be here.
We're so excited to have you. All right. We usually dive right in and ask about the story, but I love how you went from lawyer, which we think are these just like straight lace, non-emotional or less emotions, definitely less tuned into your spiritual awakening and guides to what you do now. So can you tell us a little bit about your story and how you went from lawyer to what you're doing now?
Well, I don't actually often tell the story of leaving the law, so it's super curious because this just came to me as you were saying that, but I left my first firm because the work I was doing actually didn't align with my soul. And I don't think I understood that then, right? I was working, for a high-powered client, and our client wasn't doing anything illegal, right? I just ethically did not agree with what they were doing as I was working on their case. And I remember I was up there one Saturday, I did the legal part, a good friend of mine did the factual part, and she was like behind. I was like, I'll come up on Saturday, I'll review documents with you. And we were reading these letters, and I went home and I called my mom and I just started crying. I was like, I just can't believe this is my client. I just don't believe in this. Again, they weren't doing anything wrong, quote unquote, right? I mean, it's just corporate America and how they operate, but it wasn't aligned with who I was. And so shortly thereafter, a couple of other things happened. So I switched to another firm that was like boutique, and I thought things would be better. And then I just remember my then fiance sleeping behind the door of my office at 3 a.m. because he didn't want me downtown by myself, right? So I think then when you started to live a life, it didn't match the life you're going to live, right? So it's really interesting. So I feel like I was always spiritually guided, even though I didn't understand that's what was going on, if that makes sense.
Oh, 100%. And I understand. I'm the woo-woo of the two of us, so I completely get it. And what's crazy is I actually wanted to be a lawyer. It was one of the things I wanted to do. And I can remember because, my son's name is Justice because I wanted to right the wrongs of the world.
Oh,
and
yes.
But I didn't realize that. I mean, I knew that that's why I chose his name. That was one, but I didn't realize that was such a core value until I understood what core values were a decade or so later.
Yeah.
And so I get it. And business ethics is strong. And like you said, it's not like they're doing anything wrong. It's just they have a different idea of what is believed and is okay. I think it's always situational and, it's very personal. I just had this conversation yesterday about business ethics, but an accountant or a tax person, there are some that are really creative. There are some that are very by the book. And that has a little bit to do with business ethics, and not that it's bad or good. It's just that it's the way that they are. And so some people don't want to go with the really creative ones, and some people really like the creative ones. And it doesn't make you a bad person. It's just, it is what it is. But being in tune with ourselves and knowing what's right for us is the key here. And I think that your story shows up.
Well, thank you. And, it's funny because one of my personal core values is alignment and has been for a long time. And now I feel alignment is such an overused term, right? It's just like bandied about, which makes me sad. But you have to be aligned. I mean, it's no different than, I used to joke, if you're having a therapist, if you have a yoga instructor, if you have a Pilates instructor, like if you don't mesh with them, you're not going to enjoy it and you're not going to do the work, right? So it's really important just being aligned with whoever you're working with in whatever capacity and the work you're doing. And, I think the older we get, the more important that becomes to us. And I don't want to generalize that. It might just be like my generation, because we were taught to go to the best school, get the best job, like make the most money, right? Like drive the best car. And so it's like, we're like peeling off these layers of status that we were taught by our baby boomer parents, because that's what they were raised to believe. And so it's just, I don't know, it's interesting. It's just this evolution over time. And it's funny when I think back to like 18-year-old April, I was like, wow, she was like courageous and bold and super intelligent. And then I got like taught how to behave as an adult, right? So it's almost like you're really just reverting back to who you really are. That's why I sometimes argue with the term evolution, because I think we're born a certain way and we just find our way back there. And even to, we could go deeper, even past lives, etc. I know you're woo-woo, but we won't go there.
That.
I don't know. I do not want to be 18-year-old Amanda. No way. So I'm going to say, nope, April, I'm going to keep evolving past that, because I absolutely do not want to be 18-year-old Amanda. No way in HE double hockey sticks. Nope. So you have a podcast as well. You have the Vixen Voice, and it's a top 3% global podcast. What do you love most about being a podcast host, and what is your show about?
Oh, thank you. So I have been on pause since April of last year, and we are about to, we've now unpaused it, let's just say. But I just had a lot of things going on, and it's important to me to show up and provide value and do things well. And I felt like, we were top 3% all this, but I didn't feel I was showing up the way I wanted. I didn't feel the guests were showing up the way I wanted. And so I paused to realign things, and it took a long time to come back. But I like to joke that the podcast is my sandbox. Like I'll tell my team, okay, you can tell me what to do here, or like marketing people. Like I kind of want to go play in the sandbox of the podcast and do whatever the heck I want. Like that's how I view my podcast. It's like my creative endeavor, because I'm a projector. I'm a 9 quick start, if you know the Colby. So I just have like creative downloads all the time. I have ideas all the time. And as you all know, as experienced entrepreneurs, you can cannibalize your business with your own ideas, right? If you don't keep yourself in check. So I'm very careful to always give myself a creative outlet so that I don't get bored and destroy what I built. And so, to be honest, the podcast was that. And apparently it just worked playing in the sandbox, because we rose pretty quickly. I don't know. For me, it's that creative endeavor and having a deep conversation. The weird thing was, I think we talked about this. I'm curious if y'all ever go solo. The weird thing was when I first did a solo podcast, because I was like, how do you talk for like 35 minutes to yourself and not sound like a narcissist? Like I was very concerned about that, right? So the first few ones I just brought up like webinars or like content I had taught my clients, and I kind of went through the slides, and I just imagined like, some of my favorite clients, and I was coaching them, and that just really took off well. And then the solo podcast actually became my favorite, because it wasn't coordinating. I could just come from the heart, just like I was talking to someone and really helping them. So yeah, I don't think I really answered your question, but it's very much a creative endeavor. So currently what I'm doing is interviewing 7, 8, and 9-figure CEOs. That's one pillar. Another one is what I like to call my little rants, like what's bothering me right now. And I try to make it constructive, like so that there's still a coaching session in there. So yeah, it's just playing with different things and, having these deep conversations with everyone on the other side of the podcast.
Well, it's an example of what you said just earlier. It's like, I agree with the bastardization of words nowadays, but it doesn't align. It's not sitting well with you right now. You feel like you're just, whatever. Like it could be anywhere from going through the motions to just not fully getting it out. And I, Amanda and I have had many conversations around that. Honor that 100% because then you don't feel fulfilled, and you can even go the opposite, but also like everybody's not getting out of it what they can. And so why continue to drag it, even if it's doing great, eventually get to resentment, etc. So I love that, especially kind of our generation, but also, it's okay to pause and say, you know what, I need to take a step back. And if you come back to it, you come back to it. And I think, I know you work with women in leadership and women who have achieved high points of leadership. I think at a certain threshold, they start to switch and go into the power of pause and like that like nourishing of oneself. But there's definitely a huge part where they're not taking a step back and saying, you know what, this isn't right for me anymore, because we can get swept up in what we should be doing, the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, this, like you said earlier, the status, and the different things. And so what a great example for what you teach women in leadership now. It's almost like, I know you talk a lot about a paradigm shift in women and the way that they operate, the way that they are in tune with themselves, etc.
Well, yeah. And, it's not just in the work that women have a hard time pausing. A big conversation I'm having in my collective right now is getting better at saying no to your family, because women have a really hard time saying no to their family, right? Really hard. And so this is a lot of our conversation. And, I kind of pull in the spiritual part, but it's also an entrepreneurial like rule too. Like, I was in Dan Sullivan's 10X, and he always talked about how like, when you're an entrepreneur and you're depleted, like you can't just get back to even, you have to get in the plus category. So you have excess energy for creativity, problem solving, leading your team, all these things. And I think so many people are guilty of just getting back to even and thinking it's okay. And if you're running at a high pace, you have to be in the surplus. And so I see so often it's like women wanting to take care of everyone else that keeps them from getting into the surplus, right? Surviving over thriving. It's actually been taught to me through the entrepreneurial world, but also in the spiritual world. I just kind of had this like message that, fill your cup, not just fill your cup first, but to overflow. And then you overflow on your children, your spouse, everyone around you, everyone you love, and then they fill up and they overflow back on you. So I feel like on earth right now with the energy going on, the feminine energy is so important. And have this book, You're the One. And the first chapter was like, no one's coming to save you, right? And I think that's so important right now. And it's so hard for women to go through right now because no one's saving us. I mean, look at what governments are doing worldwide. Look at what's going on in relationships. Look at just the state of affairs across the board. Like it's a time that you have to be ultimately responsible for your own joy, your own success, your own thriving. And when you do that, it's the ripple effect and everyone around you starts leveling up as well.
Absolutely. It's that champagne pyramid. You pour into yourself and then it flows down and flows down and flows down into everyone. And you're right that it's really hard to say no to the closest people around us.
Yes.
To the personal relationships, the business relationships, the people who are the closest. It's hard to set up those boundaries because you feel like you've already come so far. You've already had this barrier to overcome. And it's really hard to put down those hard barriers when they are close to you.
Totally. And the people closest to us can trigger us the most at work and home, right?
I mean, and not necessarily on purpose. That is part of
how
we've created the patterns. We've trained each other how to treat us, and we've dug ourselves into a hole. And when you're talking, I was literally having this conversation yesterday too. It's like, even though I'm super go-getter, super type A, I know when I'm in a relationship, it's been quite a minute, let's be honest, but I know when I'm in a relationship, I'm such a caretaker that I put other people first. And I remember having this conversation with my ex-husband during our early years of marriage. And even later, I mean, because we're best friends, even though I could say no, but you're exactly right. There are certain situations or circumstances, and I found myself not being able to say no more and more. And then I just dug myself a hole because I set up the way that we should operate, and that became the consistent. And so that was his expectation. Then that was my need to have to do that. And then it just became this weird dynamic. And so it sounds like you're helping women take back their power as well and really ground themselves in alignment with who they are and who they continue to evolve into. But there's a coming back to home, which I think is very much representative of what you believe. Like, we are who we are.
Yeah. And the term I like to use is standing in your dignity. And when you just understand this, you just show up differently. And I don't mean mentally and logically understand it. When you embody it and it becomes part of who you are and how you show up in the world, people are magnetized by you, even when you're telling them no. Like, they're almost most magnetized by you when you're telling them no, because you're saying no from this place of power and grace. And it's extremely powerful. And, you know, talking about triggers, one of my rants I'm about to record is in my spiritual growth. And then it's funny how you learn from one part of your life and then you can apply it to another, right? So then I apply it to entrepreneurship and relationships, and I learned like, oh, like as you grow spiritually, but this is true growing in your business, growing in personal development. However, you know, your light will trigger other people. It's either going to attract people or it's going to trigger them. We all know this. It's like, it used to be called the cost of success, right? Like, it's lonely at the top, whatever. But really, it's a shedding. You're attracting the people to be with you and you're triggering the people who are not. And so I like to say, you know, if I triggered you in my head, I'm like, oh, you're welcome, because your growth just started, right? Like, they may never come back and thank you for triggering them and starting their growth, but like, you're helping people either way. So you really just have to focus on yourself and your growth. And, you know, at the end of the day, we're responsible, and the only thing we can control are our actions and our reactions and our words and our thoughts and all these things.
Ourselves. For sure.
Yep.
Yes.
You can only control yourself. Everybody else is a crapshoot. You never know what they're going to do. You can assume they're going to do something, but even then, that's probably one of the worst things you can do, is to assume the outcome, because you just never know.
Yeah. I wanted to touch back on what Lynn was sharing, because I had the same lesson in relationships. And then I started dating again recently, like just like fun. And I was like, oh, I'm falling back into the same pattern, even though I know this is better. So I'm like, okay, we're going to keep this light and fun, like no relationships until I can learn this lesson, right? Because it is crazy how you like kind of dig those trenches and you fall back in them. And I share this because, you know, I've had friends like, I'm just never going to date again, or I'm just never going to be in a relationship again. And to me, like, I'm like, no, don't do that. It's okay. We're just still learning. It doesn't matter what age you are. Like, it can still be fun.
I don't know about that, April. I don't know about that. Maybe for you. It's not so fun. It's like the FU in fun, but other than that.
We'll talk offline. When you're in town, we'll have a cocktail and we'll have this combo.
Yeah. Maybe make it 2 cocktails and you got a deal.
That's an over a cocktail conversation for sure. I love what you just said, and we talk about it a lot. It's that, you know, well, hopefully we learn from what happens and then we can implement and grow from it, and to be completely closed off to something, regardless if it's a relationship or doing something in business or something, you're not necessarily protecting yourself. Like, if you can feel like protection at first, but eventually it becomes a hindrance. And so I love that you help others also kind of navigate that, because we a lot of times can't see it, that we're doing that. And I can name countless people where just have a conversation and I'm like, that's a wall. Like, I want to know from your point of view, because I know there's sometimes, and even with my spiritual guidance, and I'm bold and I'm pretty forward speaking, but also, and I trust my intuition of like how to navigate that, because sometimes they're not open to hear it. But even if they are, they say they are, sometimes spiritually they're not, or like energetically, I wouldn't say maybe spiritually they're open, but how do you navigate that? Because you are working with women who have accomplished a lot, who have seen a lot, and especially because they've gotten there because they've been so determined and so powerhouse. So how do you help navigate that?
And what do you mean in particular? Like, give me an example.
For example, shedding light on some of maybe their resistance in which they have.
Yeah.
So like you said, you have some friends who are like, I'm never going to date again. And you know darn well, there's some walls, there's some healing that needs to be done. And I know for me, but especially with clients, let's talk about clients, because I think we can always give tools to our listeners of like where to start. And so with you guiding, like how do you navigate that with them? Like what are some of the tools, I guess, that you give them to be able to navigate, kind of seeing beyond what their current belief is, either implicit or explicit, to start to move in the direction of grounding and dignity?
So I'm an 8 Enneagram, which makes me a challenger. So one thing I do, and also I learned this through one of my business mentors, like if you imagine there's a risk pendulum, right? And so like the further you pull the pendulum on the risk factor, the higher potential success you're going to have, right? Like stepping out there. And so this is easy to conceptualize in business. It's not so easy in personal things, or like, more things personal to you. And so what I often do is if I have a client with a strong held belief, I want to like challenge them to come all the way to the extreme to break that belief. And the goal is to settle in the middle, because you want to be balanced, right? Not on either extreme. But a lot of times you have to open their eyes to like the opposite extreme so they can settle in the middle. And, I have a client in my collective right now, like she's just not breaking through. And I've suggested spiritual healings and she's done it. And at some point, as my spiritual teacher told me, sometimes it's just your job to pray, bless, and surrender. Like we're not here to drag them across the finish line. So, but you do have to have, as a coach or a mentor or a guide, you do have to have ways of guiding people. But sometimes there are people that are not self-led enough to get there. Like we're not going to drag them. My dad just always say you can't win the Kentucky Derby with a mule. And, if the motivation's not there, the speed's not there, like they're just not going to get there. So sometimes you can help them understand that. But yeah, no, that's a very hard concept, because I had to get cured from wanting to save the world. So I've kind of left that behind.
I also have. I had that, and I still can kind of float into that, but not in the same way I did when I was younger. So I was wondering about that, and I am totally going to steal that when the Kentucky Derby. Mules are beautiful too. So
yes,
we're not saying anything about
they just can't win the Kentucky Derby. There's nothing wrong. They're just not a racehorse.
Exactly. So we're not judging mules here, people.
I love this conversation. Speaking of all the mules out there. The thing that I think is interesting about stepping into more of your power, more of your alignment, because I'm not the woo-woo one, particularly of this group, I'm not the woo-woo one, but it does affect other parts of your business when you really are aligned with what you truly believe, even if you're not 100% sure. Yes. As Lynn said, she didn't know what her core beliefs were in the beginning. If you don't know what your core beliefs are, you might want to spend a little time figuring that out, because it will show up in ways and how it dictates you and how you will make decisions and what decisions you won't make based on those core values. And if you don't really know them yet, they might already be driving you, even if you don't realize what they are. But it's so much easier to stay in alignment and to get further spiritually, entrepreneurially, whatever, financially, if you know those already. It's just knowing more about yourself is always a good stepping stone into being a better version of yourself.
Yeah. And, one other thing is, I know y'all have one-to-one clients that you consult, and you have groups that you run and cohorts and retreats. And I really believe in the power of group learning when it comes to these things, because we become mirrors for each other, right? And so I actually just did a post about this, like talking about how the power of self-reflection and entrepreneurialism, because, it's so painful at first. Like most of us are painfully self-aware if we've chosen to step up into leadership roles. And so you really have to get comfortable with that self-reflection and that pain. Like you have to, turn it into something powerful that you can use. If someone can't get over that hump, that's what I feel really holds them back. Like if they can't bring down their own wall and get over it. And I really believe in the power of community to help that, because when everyone else is looking in the mirror and getting past it, it's like a very strong pull to do that. In fact, I had a one-to-one client that I was like, look, I really feel like you need to go into my mastermind. She went in at the highest level of my mastermind. It's still a third of what she was paying me to be a one-to-one client, right? But I just knew like she needed that, like other women around her. She needed the community. And she texted me yesterday. She just made the switch in the last month. And she was like, oh my gosh, I love this community. Thank you. And like, that's the power. Just like really being honest about how you can guide someone. I mean, people pay us to help transform them. Like that's powerful. That's a heavy responsibility. So being honest with yourself. And that's why I feel like, if you don't have a spiritual practice, you have to have something that's deeper and greater than yourself that you can tap into. That's like, okay, what's the right move in this situation? And I just feel when you do what's right for everyone involved, which sometimes doesn't feel like the right thing at the time, like everyone wins. I mean, it's just this weird thing that happens.
I agree. I've so many times in multiple businesses talked to Amanda and I've had this conversation, and I know she's nudged me the other way, but like talk myself out
shut up, April.
Making more money than what we can because it's the right decision for them. And yeah. I'm joking about it because if it's the right decision, Amanda definitely believes in the right decision for. And I can remember having discussions even with one of my businesses in Hawaii that was not consulting. And so I completely get what you're saying. And I love that you talked about the group collective, especially for that level of women that you are working with, because a lot of times they are very alone and feel very siloed in so many ways. And it is one of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that love and belonging, and to find a community where you have that safety to be able to do it, who are kind of just taking off the masks and allowing for that evolution is really extraordinary. And I think all can get, I'll generalize that it's not just one particular type of person that can get that, or a high powered woman, but definitely at that level, it's a game changer. And I think it also, like, it goes to what you just said, like swinging the pendulum completely the other way, because they're so used to being siloed in their trajectory that group will give them a different pendulum, the other side of the pendulum.
Well, and I also think one thing I love, like your groups are very much like mine, there are people from different industries coming in. And I just remember, in the financial industry, and I was in the upper echelon, and thank goodness, like a group I worked with formed like a mastermind of like, those of us. And so I still had people above me in the mastermind, but I was just like, I want to go outside of the financial industry. What are other people talking about? Because I feel like you can get so siloed in your industry and you're just hearing the same thing echoing everywhere, right? And when you go get exposed to other industries and what people are doing, then you can really bring creativity and disruption back to what you do. Because I get that question a lot. Well, I'm a lawyer. Shouldn't I be in a mastermind with a bunch of lawyers? Or I'm a financial advisor. And I'm like, okay, I totally recommend that because there are certain things you need to be doing. But I mean, I was always in one in my industry and one outside of my industry. And right now I'm in 2 high-level masterminds. And like, they're some of my favorite things I do. I love being in my community of peers. Like, that's what fills our cup because, we're always filling other people's cup with the work we do. And I get fulfillment from that, but I need my cup filled too. So like, a lot of times people are like, well, wait, you're in masterminds too? You have coaches too? I'm like, heck yeah, the best in the world have coaches. Like, why wouldn't you have a coach?
Yes.
Everybody I would say just about everybody I know who is successful has a coach currently, or has had a coach, or works with somebody, or is working with a specific coach. You need someone else's eyes on things. It doesn't matter how successful you are. There's always somebody else who can see the forest for the trees. Like,
yes,
there's all sorts of things that you're going to miss because you're in it. And so a good mentor, a good coach, consultant can help you see that.
also, I think, a little bit of the accountability piece and the responsibility piece. And definitely women do have this a bit more. And I'm not saying men don't have it too, but like you said, you wanted to save the world. But a lot of times women, especially at that level, and if they have families, they're doing it all. They're doing everything. And I often talk about, like, that's why I love to go to the gym and go to classes. Like, I can do I've worked out my whole life, but I want somebody to tell me what to do, boss me around, like, be responsible for the growth of that part of my health. And it's the same concept, and how much better we can get. And if we had somebody, I do want to touch on this too, and I know I'm jumping a little bit, is that one thing when you came up, or when you were talking about that came up, is the humility and the humbleness that we should embody as well, or have that to be able to be a part of that. Because a lot of times women or even men don't join things like that because they're so ego driven, or if they're in a group like that, they feel like they're smarter than everybody, they're leading everybody, they're this and that. And like, that's not a way to get out of, first of all, you're not creating a safe environment for anybody, but that's not a way to grow either. And I felt it so much when you were talking about that. So I love that.
Well, the basics and the fundamentals are what win games, right? Like one time I had this amazing executive assistant, and when I switched to coaching, I'm like, oh, can you go watch these classes from Amy Porterfield, right? Like, she was like the queen OG of like, and it was how to set up your back ends and all that. And I was just like, go watch. I know how to do that, April. I'm like, okay, but I paid for these courses, go do it. And like, she went and did them, and then she came back, she's like, that's boring basic stuff. And I'm like, sometimes we have to be reminded of the basics, right? And like, that attitude just kind of continued, and she had been phenomenal in my other industry, but she just didn't want to do it here. And I don't understand that. Like, I can go to a beginning, like, business class and learn something, because we have to be reminded of things, and we're all different, right? But yeah, I think that humility goes back to self-reflection, and no one likes this answer. It goes back to like, how do you break through the resistance? You have to do it yourself, and you do it by practicing your self-love and self-forgiveness. And, you know, I kind of talk about the 5 steps to spiritual wellness, and well, those are like the harder steps. So you can start with gratitude. That's kind of the easiest step, right? And then humility is in there, and surrender. And so, but we don't realize how much we beat ourselves up. And we're like, oh, I don't have to forgive myself for anything. Really? Because you're punishing yourself every freaking day. Maybe you need to forgive yourself for punishing yourself. And like, when you start practicing this on a daily basis, it also becomes like what you mirror to the world. So not only are you loving and forgiving yourself, but you're loving and forgiving everyone else. And like, compassion goes up, humility goes up, and all these things. So yeah, I love that you touched on like humility. I still think you have to stay humble and hungry, right? And sometimes it's hungry for growth, hungry for learning. It's not always hungry for money, but like, I don't know. I think you have to stay hungry and humble.
100%. Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. You have to maintain the hunger, even if it's just part of the passion of what you're doing, if it's excitement for the next step, if it's growing your team, you have to stay hungry. And humility is a tough one to swallow, but man, does it make you a better leader.
100%.
Interesting. Something came up when you were talking about that, and I don't know if I've ever had this reflection, is that, you know, the hunger can come from so many different spaces and memories and fibers. And we've talked about this a lot. Amanda, correct me if I'm wrong. I just had a flash of like, you know, because your clients are these 7, 8, 9-figure women who have accomplished so much success, that the hunger can, a lot of times, you know, it can come from a negative thing, but it can come from the want of, right, as well. Yes. And like, and it could be the want of the way people perceive us, the want of this, the want of a certain status, and a want of breaking barriers. But also it can come from that, like, you know, to not go backward. Right. So it can come from both sides, I guess, is what I'm saying. And it's interesting. I don't know if I've ever talked about that side.
Yeah, I like to say desire's not the distraction, it's the strategy, right? So a lot of times it's like, oh, I have to be disciplined. No, like, what do you freaking want? Just like admit, what do you freaking want, right? I go through this during goal setting. The number one mistake I see, like, I only work with women, so men might do this too, but I see them make is they're setting their goals too low, and then they're trying to plan it out and map it, and it's the pieces aren't fitting, right? And so when I had my Vixen Vision Day, which is my like day intensive training, and I'm walking the room, and you start seeing them get like fidgety and they're not comfortable and they're like, this just isn't working, and they're getting frustrated. And every time I would look down and I was like, this is the income you're going to make this quarter? And they were like, yeah. I'm like, is that all you want? Well, no, but I want to be realistic. And I'm like, no, this number needs to go up. And the moment they put it up to what they really wanted, like all the pieces fell in place, right? So it's like, I mean, you know, I joke, I have a mentor that's like, we want delulu goals, like delusional, you know, I mean, there's a balance, but like you do have to stretch. Like the reward has to be worth the risk and the pain and the effort. And if it's not, when my best friend was starting her business, she was like, oh, I think if I just made 60,000, I'd be happy. And I go, don't do it. And she goes, what? Because she was asking for advice. I go, if you're not making at least six figures, it is not worth the pain and effort. Stay home with your kids. You're enjoying being home with the kids. Live your best life. Your husband makes good money. You don't have to work. And she was like, that was exactly what her husband told her. And so she did multiple six figures her first time out in business, first year. But I think she did it because that mindset set up there, right? Like she was given permission to set the goal at that place. And then it's like, oh, cool. But I mean, no one tells us like, don't do it. But like, if the reward is not going to be worth the pain and effort, like, don't freaking do it. Don't do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, we set ourselves up for lack of success when we do things like that. We're putting our own glass ceiling on it. And, you know, the whole finish line concept with the best sprinters or racers, like their coaches teach them that the finish line is 50 yards past it. And so if you're constantly thinking,
love it,
is the finish line, like you're creating a pattern within your own self, your belief systems, your acceptance of your drive, your fire, you're putting a cap on it. And so I love that. We love the Lulu goals. We love them. Stretching
Absolutely.
yourself.
And it's always surprising to me when you ask someone, like a client, flat out, what do you want to make this quarter? What's your, and they just are like, I don't know. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? You know, I can't tell you what your number should be. I can't tell you what your goals are. I need you to really think hard. What is your delusional goal? If you want to think realistically, like we can make the numbers be realistic, but why don't you step out of the realism for a second? And what do you actually want? What's the goal for your business? What's the goal for your income? What's the goal for your lifestyle? And go from there.
I love that. And one thing, you know, I was teaching a 12-week intensive, which I love, but it takes a lot of energy helping women get to six figures. So I'll open that up at some point again. But I just be like, you have to decide, are you running a business or a charity? Because either are fine, but you have to delineate, is this a business or a charity? Like you get to make that decision. And if it's a business, you need to make money. Like it's that simple. Otherwise, go run a charity and enjoy your life. No big deal.
Yeah. Have a hobby business. It's okay. Just
Be
remind yourself that it's a hobby.
Yeah. Be honest with yourself and the efforts and the energy that you're putting in. Well, April, any last little nuggets, maybe something that we didn't talk about, or just something for our audience that are on their own path, you know, the path of badassery, that could help them really tap into what they need to tap into to move the needle, to swing that pendulum for themselves?
Yeah, so I always end my podcast with the same thing. The world needs more love. So this can come in many ways, right? And it's like, how can you love yourself? Like, what is it that you really want? Like, just be honest with yourself and like freaking go for it. Why not? Worst case, you don't get it, right? But like, if you never try, you don't know. And I think like people diminish that going for what we want is an act of love to ourselves and to the world, because we were created this way for a reason. So if you're not fully expressing yourself, you're actually harming everyone around you.
If you don't make it, that's where you are now. So
Yeah.
you shoot for the big thing, you don't make it, that's where you were anyway. So No harm done.
All right.
So where can people find you, April?
Awesome. So on Instagram and YouTube at Vixen Gathering, Vixen Gathering. On LinkedIn, I'm April Roberts, April R. Roberts. And yeah, that's the best place to tap in. I have lots of episodes on YouTube, just like y'all do.
Wonderful.
Love it.
Of course, all of that will be in the show notes. So if you want to connect with April and learn more about the Vixen Gathering, all the information is below in the show notes for you to digest and take action.
Yes. Make sure that you are liking, commenting, and sharing this podcast with people who you feel could use a little bit of the knowledge that was dropped today. Also, make sure you're friending April and giving her a comment on what you liked most about her episode. And yeah.
Thank you so much. And until next time,
get after it. Thanks for tuning in. But remember, listening is not doing.
take what you heard today and move.
Share the episode, leave us a review, and tag us when you take action.
Head over to the pursuitofbadasserie.com and see how we're helping entrepreneurs get results without the fluff.
Until next time,
Let's get after it.